Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, we are diving into a skill that is absolutely critical for anyone in project management, especially in the construction world. We're talking about project risk planning. And look, this isn't just about dodging bullets. It's about learning to master uncertainty to pretty much guarantee success.
How many times have you heard someone say this, right? But here's the secret. Projects are almost never just doomed. More often than not, they're the victims of one single avoidable mistake, a total failure to plan for risk. It's really not about bad luck. It's about a lack of foresight.
So, first up, what even is project risk? Before we can get a handle on it, we have to understand what we're actually dealing with. And as you're about to see, there are always two sides to the coin when it comes to uncertainty. Okay, so here's the textbook definition, but it's a good one. A risk is any uncertain event, but I want you to focus on this one crucial phrase, positive or negative effect. And that right there is the key, because it means risk isn't just about all the bad stuff that can happen. And this slide breaks it down perfectly. On one side, you've got the threats, the stuff we all worry about, right? Delays, cost overruns, safety problems. But on the other side, you have opportunities. The chance for a breakthrough innovation, finding some major cost savings, or even wrapping up a phase way ahead of schedule. To make this super clear, let's picture a construction site. Let's say you decide to start digging without doing a proper soil test first. That's a massive gamble. You could hit solid rock, you could hit unstable ground, a high water table. It's a classic threat that could bring your entire foundation stage to a screeching halt and cost a fortune to sort out. All right, so that brings us to section 2. Why does planning matter so much? If risk is just a part of the game, how do we deal with it? Well, this is where planning becomes your absolute best friend. Think of it less like boring paperwork and more like your project's personal shield. Here's the hard truth. You can try to ignore risk, but I promise you, it will not ignore you. Failing to plan for what could happen is basically leaving your project's success completely up to chance. Yeah, you might get lucky, but you've given up all control, and that is a place no project manager ever wants to be. And when you get planning right, the payoff is huge. You dramatically cut down on those awful Friday afternoon surprises that ruin your weekend. You put your team in a position to actually grab those opportunities we talked about. And at the end of the day, it all leads to hitting your goals on time and on budget, which, as we know, is how you measure a successful project. Okay, this brings us to the real meat of our discussion, the 4-step risk process. This is your actionable framework, a simple, repeatable process you can use on any project, no matter how big or small. This is your guide to getting it done. And here they are. It's a really logical flow. First, you identify the risks. Simple enough. Then you assess them, figure out which ones really matter. Next, you develop a response plan. And finally, you control that response as the project moves forward. It takes you from just asking what if to having a solid plan. So let's walk through each one. Step 1 is all about brainstorming. You get your team in a room and you ask the big question, what could possibly go wrong here? But just as important, you also have to ask, what could go unexpectedly right? You want to use checklists, bring in experts, and look at past projects to build a really solid list of every potential risk you can think of. Now, if you're in construction, your list might look a lot like this. These probably sound pretty familiar, right? Delays getting a critical piece of equipment, like a crane, can stop everything. A holdup with city permits can kill your schedule before you even break ground. And of course, there's always the weather and unreliable suppliers to worry about. So once you have this huge list of risks, you can't just treat them all the same. That would be impossible. That's why step 2, assessment, is so critical. For every single risk on your list, you need to evaluate 2 simple things. How likely is it to happen? And if it does, how big of a deal will it be? What's the impact? And a risk matrix like this one is a fantastic tool for this. It really helps you visualize where to focus your energy. Look at that top left box, high likelihood and high impact. That crane delivery delay we mentioned, it goes right there. That's a 5-alarm fire you need to plan for. Now compare that to the bottom right, a brief power outage. Low likelihood, low impact. You note it, but you don't lose sleep over it. So, once you know your priorities, what do you actually do about them? Well, that's step 3, developing a response. And you've basically got 4 main strategies. You can try to avoid the risk entirely by changing your plan. You can mitigate it to make it less likely or less damaging. You can transfer it, think insurance, or you can simply accept it and keep an eye on it. For example, to mitigate an unreliable supplier, you'd make sure you have a backup supplier already lined up. And finally, we have step 4, response control. And please, please remember this. Risk management is not a set it and forget it kind of thing. It's a living, breathing process. You have to constantly monitor the situation, be ready to pull the trigger on your response plans, and update your assessments as things on the ground change.
Okay, so we've got the 4-step process down. Now let's talk about a few key tools that will help you actually put all of this into practice. These are the instruments in your toolkit.
First up is something called a risk breakdown structure, or RBS. And honestly, the family tree analogy is perfect. It's just a chart that helps you sort all those risks you identified into neat little categories. On a really complex job, like a metro tunnel project, this kind of clarity is a lifesaver. It lets you separate technical risks, like a machine breaking down, from external ones, like unexpected groundwater. Next up, your contingency plan. This is just your plan B. It's what you decide you're going to do before a risk actually becomes a reality. A great construction example. Say you identify a risk that a cold snap could delay how long it takes for your concrete to cure, while your contingency plan might be to have heated blankets on standby, ready to go. No panic, just action. And of course, every good plan needs a safety net. That's where buffers and reserves come in. You build time buffers into your schedule to soak up any unexpected delays. You have budget reserves set aside to cover the costs of the risks you already know about. And then you have management reserves. And this is a crucial one. That's your cushion for the unknown unknowns, the things that come completely out of left field. Okay, let's move into our final section because this is where risk planning goes from being defensive to being truly strategic. We're going to flip the script and shift our focus from just protecting against threats to actively chasing the upside of all this uncertainty.
See, just like we have strategies for threats, we have strategies for opportunities. You can exploit an opportunity to make sure it happens. Like, for instance, pre-purchasing a bunch of steel when you see prices are at a historic low. You can also work to enhance an opportunity, share it with a partner, or just be ready to accept it and take advantage if the chance comes along.
And that really brings us to the most important takeaway from all of this. Risk is just part of the deal. It's a fundamental piece of any project, and you are never going to eliminate it completely. But, and this is a big but, failure is not inevitable. With a smart, proactive approach, failure is a choice you don't have to make. So, I'll leave you with this question to think about. How are you going to take these ideas and turn the uncertainty in your projects into a real strategic advantage? By mastering these tools and this mindset, you can do way more than just survive risk. You can actually use it to win. Thanks so much for joining me today.